Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality back with you today to go over what I think for now is at least the final part of my series about why woke ideology doesn't work in terms of storytelling. And the sixth example here is that the audience can't relate to characters. And of course, I'll bring up a couple of actual examples from movies that we've seen or that have come out recently, and also use that same example of the prince/hero rescuing the princess, to dumb it down a little bit. So you've probably seen in just the last few years a number of characters in movies that are getting praised by leftist media about like, oh, this character is so awesome, she's a girl boss and all this stuff. And this tends to be a female character thing, especially these days. And you see these characters that, just Joe Q normals watching this movie and they're going like, this is not a good person. The example I can think of, and I haven't seen this show, is Willow, the Willow series that's on Disney Plus. Now, I'm a fan of the movie that came out, back in '88. But when the series came out, you knew, given that it was going to be on Disney, that they were going to do something with it. And apparently there's one character in it that everybody I know that I follow on YouTube that's watched it has pointed out this one particular character as just being utterly insufferable. And it's kind of the same, has the same characteristics that these types of female characters have in other, not editing that out, they have in other TV shows and movies as well, which is that these characters are portrayed as good guys. Like this particular character is on the side of the good guys going on the quest to do the thing, but she's extremely bossy, she's immature, she's self-absorbed, like all characteristics that would be just make you, if you had someone in your life that was those things, you'd probably not want anything to do with them. Okay, it's like even though they're helping you with something, you're like, I'm just gonna make sure I stay away from you because you're kind of an a-hole, if you will, But you see this a lot too. You even see it in going back to my first video on the subject when these two things are related together. My first video being the unstoppable female heroes. One of the examples I brought up in that video was Captain Marvel. And I can speak more about this here because you had a character that did, just from the moment she showed up on the screen, she did bad things. Some guy just basically made a comment at her, and her response to just this innocuous comment by this one character was to rob him and steal his motorcycle. That's not exactly proportionate or anything, but and from there it was just kind of the whole thing. Like she was just kind of an insufferable character from everything that I've heard about it. And again, it's the only phase, like Infinity Saga, I should say, Marvel property that I've never seen, nor do I own on Blu-ray, is the Captain Marvel movie. Because I just don't really care. I cared up until the marketing started for that movie. Then it was like, all right, I'm not going to watch this. And it made no difference in terms of Endgame or not, even though they tried to make it out. But that's a whole nother video for another time. But there's other movies that you see coming out in TV shows where they play up these characters, and you're just like, these are not characteristics that I want in these characters. And people might try to sit here and say that, like, well, you should still be able to relate to them. And what they do with that is they try to tell you that if you're a particular skin color, you should be able to relate to a character of the same skin color, which isn't true by any stretch of the imagination. People relate to characteristics. They don't relate to surface level characteristics. Okay. They relate to personality and, common experiences and stuff like that. Like, someone could be the total polar opposite of me in every way, shape, or form. And if they say they have a dog, I'll be like, oh, you have a dog? And then you start talking about dogs and suddenly you relate to that person in some level. It's a small level, but you relate to them. Okay. And what I think about this whole thing is, like, what these leftists tend to believe is that, like, if I was to watch, say, Boys in the Hood, for an example, which I highly recommend everybody go watch. It's a fantastic movie. It's probably in my top 20, if not my top 10 favorite movies of all time. It's just a great movie. But I've never grown up, I didn't grow up black in South Central LA in the 1980s, so according to them, I should have no idea what it's like watching that movie. I should just watch it and be over me going, okay, I guess I just saw a movie. And instead, there's at least 3, if not 4 characters in that movie that I can relate to because I've had similar, not necessarily experiences, but similar thoughts as those characters. I was the most like Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character, Trey, in the movie, where I was kind of more just the normal kid that occasionally hung out with some of the bad people, but, didn't ever get into trouble because I knew when to walk away from things. I also could relate to Ricky, who was Morris Chestnut's character, in a sense that he was just trying to do better for his very young family, so he had to study hard to do well on the SAT to be able to go to college, and even though I don't have a young family or anything, I can feel how, from just what he was trying to go through, that he was really trying to put in a conscious effort to do good on this thing for his future, and I think anybody can relate to that. And then I can relate to Ice Cube's character of Doughboy in it, who is Ricky's half-brother. And when, spoiler alert, or 30-year-old spoiler alert, when Ricky is murdered and Doughboy knows who did it, he's, everyone can feel that revenge that you'd want to take. Okay, and if you scale that back a little bit, even now, if you have any siblings and someone did something or even said something to one of your siblings, your first reaction is going to be to, go and confront the person that said or did the thing to your sibling, even if it was something where they just, again, something very minor, not obviously murdering them. But I can relate to these characters because I've maybe felt those things before, or I've been that person before, my background of growing up in a middle-class suburb of Chicago in a very heavy Jewish population, of which I am one of those, that was predominantly white. They're telling me that I shouldn't be able to relate to any of those characters in Boys in the Hood, but that movie is so well written that I can relate to multiple characters in that movie, though I've never shared a single experience with them. And that's what needs to be done, okay, is that you need to make characters that people can relate to, okay? You don't have to look like the person, I remember one of the oldest lessons I think that everybody learns in their family, at least I did, is never judge a book by its cover. What these leftists are telling you is that, oh no, you should expressly judge the book by its cover, and what's inside shouldn't matter at all. And that's contrary to common sense. First of all, they'll tell you that, like, characters that look a certain way, if they do bad things, they're allowed to do bad things. But if a character looks this other way, even if they're doing all good things, well, too bad. They look that way and you shouldn't feel anything for them. And it's like that goes against just common sense. Okay. And coming back to the beginning, when you have these specifically, and it seems, again, almost overwhelmingly female characters, like, people are just watching this and going, I can't do that. Like, again, coming back to my initial video about unstoppable female heroes, now going with Rey Skywalker, who was the other one I mentioned in that. Who can relate to that character? She didn't learn anything. She knew everything already. And nobody's perfect. Like, there are no perfect people that exist that would be able to watch that movie and go, oh yeah, I can do all that. And that's why I think the series overall, in terms of fan appreciation, obviously not in terms of box office, or you could probably say a little bit, why it wasn't as good as it should have been. And even I would say it would be considered somewhat of a failure, is because you had a main character that people were just like, yeah, she's a thing, she's there. She's not a memorable character, though, because she didn't really do anything. She didn't grow. I mean, look at the story arc difference between Luke and Rey. Luke started out as this whiny little bastard of a kid that had to learn how to use his powers and became, the greatest Jedi of all time, eventually. I mean, that goes beyond the lore of what you saw in Return of the Jedi, whereas Rey was just, she's perfect at the beginning, and by the time it ended, she's the same. You didn't go along on a journey with her. You were just kind of there watching her. With Luke, you went on a journey with that character to learn, as he did, all of this stuff. Okay, and that's why Luke will forever be a better character than Rey, no matter what anybody says. So I don't guess it for this. I don't really need to use my prince hero rescuing the princess example, because these other examples are definitely much more. They're much better. So I would just stick with that. I wouldn't really worry too much about my own personal example, but you get the point. Is that for the woke storytelling, you need to make characters that people can relate to. Okay, that's where everything has to start. And if you can't do that, you're going to end up with a property or a movie where people just go, whatever, and they move on with their lives, and you've created a piece of art that is totally unmemorable. Anyway, let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Talk to you later.